Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first episode of The Comeback, where over the next few months, we'll be spending time with Nevada's top leaders in athletics and business as we talk about sports, hope, and recovery during the pandemic. My name is DJ Allen with X's and O's of Success, and today we're at one of the top practice facilities in the nation for college basketball, the Mendenhall Center, the home of the UNLV Runnin' Rebels. And I'm with two of my favorite people in the state to spend time with, UNLV head basketball coach TJ Otzelberger and the CEO and president of the Henderson Chamber of Commerce, Scott Mulrath. And Scott, before we dive into our conversation with Coach, thank you to you and your teammates for putting this program together.
I appreciate that, DJ, and it's great to be here with Coach at the Mendenhall. Just wanted to take a moment to really frame up what brought us here today. We, as business organizations, in really a recovery period during this pandemic, across the state, we have put together a network. It's called the Nevada's Business Information Network. And for the first time in the history of our state, we have seen so many organizations come together: the Henderson Chamber, the Vegas Chamber, the Latin Chamber, our economic development agencies such as the LVGEA and EDON, and the list goes on. And this gathering of organizations has been working together on advocacy, distribution of information for our business community, for our nonprofit community, how we're all just working together to get ourselves up and out of this pandemic period, really as a team. And it's been quite a process the last few months, and I think it'll really continue to be a process over the coming months as, again, the Business Information Network works together for Nevada. And then briefly, I do want to mention as well, DJ, our sponsors for today. We appreciate the investments made in this program by United Healthcare and Health Plan in Nevada, Wells Fargo Bank, Martin Harris Construction, and of course, Guy Martin builds so many of the great projects across our valley, and the Las Vegas Raiders. And I think as DJ will be touching on in a bit, we're going to be episode 2. We'll be with Raider President Mark Bedane and Mary Beth Seawald, the President and CEO at the Vegas Chamber. So that'll be episode 2 coming our way.
Oh, we're excited for the comeback, excited that you were able to put this together. And let's dive in now. We have Coach here. You know, obviously, let's start with the pandemic. We're not going to talk about that the whole time. But how has the virus changed your world the most?
Well, first of all, the virus caused NCAA and college basketball an immediate shutdown when it hit. And so for some of us, we're so used to that NCAA tournament. I know there's far more things, important things in the world, but right at that moment, you're thinking there's no NCAA tournament, and seasons came right to an end. And so we had to immediately start game planning with the young men in our program of, okay, what does this mean? How can we be there to support you? And then how does our organization and our program move forward in these new conditions? And I found that first and foremost, I didn't have a whole lot of answers, but I realized how many questions the young people had in our program and their families. And so we tried to educate ourselves as quickly as we could so that we could provide them with information. At the forefront of everything was making sure they knew we cared about them, we supported them. We wanted to make sure that they were safe, and however we could have their back, we wanted to be there. And we tried initially to do everything we could to use this as utilize a unifying opportunity to bring people together. And there was certainly challenges, but we've continued to reinvent how we communicate. Obviously, Zoom calls and Skypes, and there's various different meetings, and FaceTime has taken the place of a lot of in-person communication. But where we've wanted to operate from is a place of empathy, a place of compassion, as we're still learning through what this means, even to the present time. Things are always changing. So we've tried to be adaptive, and we've tried to care for people and continue to figure out what our new normal is going to be.
Obviously, a lot of the same challenges that people in so many different industries are going through, but at your level, it's just high profile. And of course, as you talked about the tournament, that was just high profile. But you talked about opportunities, because there are opportunities for growth through everything. What have you learned about yourself?
The number one thing is to place your time where your priorities are, because I think these type of challenges cause you to reflect on, we only have so many hours to impact lives, to live out the lives that we'd like to lead. And you want to make sure that you're not taking moments for granted. You're not taking days for granted and opportunities. And so it took me to a place of feeling so fortunate for the family that we have and everybody being healthy. Also with our team, that we didn't have on our team any, no real tragic responses or behaviors as a result of the pandemic. But then just want to make sure that every day that we're spending the time where we want, where we're prioritizing things that are important to us with our family. And so I think we've tried to continue to do that. It's brought me to a place, like I said, of so much gratitude and humility. And then at the same time, trying to figure out with our team how we can continue to lead them through this tough time.
When you talk about leading through the tough times, so many times in our world when we have tragedies, we saw in Vegas a couple years ago with the shooting on the Strip, the role that the Golden Knights played and the healing, and that just happens every single year in sports. And what's been unique about the pandemic is we haven't had sports. And it really makes us think about what is the role of sports in community and society?
We all want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And the one thing that sports brings to our community, even specifically here, is that we can all rally together. We can unify. We can be part of a greater good and a cause together. And, I'm fortunate as a leader of this program, the storied program of UNLV basketball, what an impact this program has had on this community here in Las Vegas, how it's been helped the community grow, helped the community come together. And so it's even more of a unique time for me as we build our program and we try to bring people together. And I take the job that I have with a great deal of responsibility. I hold it in a very high regard and know that in this position, I have the ability to impact a lot of lives. And so we want to make sure that we're trying to unify, we're trying to bring people together. And that's the essence of sports. And I think our team has a unique place in Las Vegas history as well as on the national landscape of college basketball.
Scott, I know sports has played a big role in your life, but as you talked about in the opening, this is about us coming together as a team, as businesses, as a society. I mean, we have to have a comeback. From a business standpoint, what role do you see sports having in a community?
Well, I think when sports were gone, what a void. I think that question is answered by, that once it was removed, and as Coach said, it came to a stop. Everything just stopped. And, I was there, I went from thinking the next night game I was going to, looking forward to that, and then all of a sudden it's, there's nothing in regards to that. There's nothing. You realize what a unique and how Vegas has grown as well, that the following of sports, the rallying point, that the community really does rally around these teams. And as Las Vegas has continued to, develop as a sporting town, it's part of our fabric, and that goes back to UNLV basketball. But I think we miss that sense of community, of being together, cheering, high-fiving, and all that's going to change now too. But just having it back and having that identity, we're looking forward to getting back to that, certainly as a community.
And we talk about UNLV Running Rebel basketball really is just part of the DNA of Las Vegas. And so yourself, you've been here just over a year now. Grew up in Wisconsin, coached in Iowa, coached in Washington, just before here in South Dakota. Then you tell Allison, your wife, let's take our young family to Las Vegas. What has surprised you the most about, and you live in Henderson, what has surprised you the most about living in Southern Nevada?
What's been a very pleasant surprise is the family values, the sense of community, and how welcoming everybody's been to our family. And I want to win every game that we play in. I have a tremendous sense of pride that we drive this program back to national prominence, that we're about championships and graduation and being highly involved in the community. at the same time, my family's at the core of everything that we do, and we couldn't be more thankful to everybody that's put their arms around us, that's welcomed us, a friendly smile, a hello, our kids with the schools and parks, and the sense of just everybody being together. We love that for our family, and as a husband and father, when you're out spending the hours working that we do, it gives you that feeling of comfort and safety for your family when you're on the road traveling and out recruiting, and we couldn't be more grateful to everyone for that.
So how many kids do you have, ages and names?
So we have 3 children, twins, boy, girl. Jace is my son, and Olivia, my daughter. They're 5 years old. They're getting ready to hopefully embark upon kindergarten this year, so we're excited for that. And then my youngest, Stella, is just turned 2 years old. She's our firecracker. She runs the house. She's the head coach already at 2 years old. She bullies her older brother and sister, as well as from time to time her mom and dad.
Nice. What do you think about that, coming out to Southern Nevada, and this is where you and Allison want to be and raise the family? And you talked about the history of UNLV Running Rebels, and I know you grew up during a time period like myself when the Running Rebels were ranked #1, winning a national championship, going to Final Fours. UNLV basketball, there's something about that program in this community. It is just special. What's your vision for the program?
We want a program that makes everybody in the community proud. And I know that has a lot to do with wins and losses. And I know that in coaching, what we all sign up for is you're gauged by the bottom line. How many wins, how many championships, how many NCAA tournaments, how far did you go? And that's certainly a part of the equation. But for me, I look at it more as a vocation. I want the young men in our program to be tremendous students, to succeed in the classroom, to prepare themselves for the rest of their lives. I want them to be community leaders, successful family members, business people. And so that sense of pride for me, it comes in all those areas. I take as much enjoyment in a team winning a game as a young man getting a degree, as a player calling me down the road and saying, you know what, coach, I just gave birth to my son or my daughter, or I'm pursuing a master's degree. All those things matter a lot to me because I've been fortunate to have a lot of leaders and mentors that have taken me under their wing at points in my life where I needed it, were there to support me, to love me, and to help give me advice. And I want to be that for the young men in our program. And so look, I'm as competitive as anybody. We want to win, and we want to win at a high level. I think we showed some signs in that first year. You could see some of the building blocks being put in place, and we want to continue that rise. But at the same time, it's the holistic growth and development of the young men in our program for the long term that really, fuels my fire.
You mentioned last year, and as a basketball fan and someone who just loves to see growth of teams, I loved watching last year's team because early on, the overtime losses, and I know that's tough as a coach, but Kansas State and Cal and Cincinnati and almost there. And then really you're able to challenge the team in December saying, hey, who's in with us? And when you look over conference play, to go 12-6, to win 6 out of the last 7 regular season games, things were going the right direction. Obviously, as Running Rebel fans know, going down to San Diego State where they're undefeated at 26-0, number 4 in the nation, and beating them there. Some good things were happening at the end of last year. So as you're looking at year 2 now, as you reflect back on year 1, what are your thoughts?
Well, in the first season, you saw that roller coaster that many times you do when a new coach comes in. The young men in our program, it's almost like you're building a relationship backwards, right? We got married to each other, and then we tried to build that relationship over time. And I think that for whatever reason, each individual picked UNLV, why they came here. And for many, I wasn't part of that equation. And the system that we put in place and how we do things, the degree of accountability, for some, it's not what they signed up for. And I think, so what you saw early in the year is a group saying, okay, coach, we're still kind of feeling you out on this. I know what you're talking about. I know we talk a lot about humility and gratitude. We talk about unity and passion. And, we get our guys up early and we believe that we work as hard or harder than anybody. And so I think early in the year you saw some of that struggle in, are we all the way in? Is he really what he says he's about? And so now you find yourself in these games and you're not able to be successful. And then as the season moves on, and they really understand, look, this is what this program is about. He's going to be the same person as our leader every day. The coaches are the same people, and it's going to be about hard work, and it's going to be about who plays the hardest and who can bind together. And then when they have something to grasp onto and to believe in, I think you see that passion and guys playing where, you have individuals, but the sum is better maybe than the individuals. And so that was what we were fortunate to have, I think, at the end of the year. And now as you move forward into that second season, now everybody knows what the standard is. Everybody knows where the accountability, the standard, what we'll accept, and we'll only accept the best effort every day. And so it's exciting to move into the second year. It certainly, as I reflect on year one, it felt like it was about 10 years in one season, but I was really proud of the young men in our program and how they came together, the life lessons they learned, and how they played for each other in a challenging time.
And that's the one thing about UNLV fans, being born and raised here. They know when the Rebels are out there playing hard and playing for one another. And they saw that last year. We saw the glimpses, whether it was the Utah State win on New Year's Day, where everybody kind of said, wait a second, and then San Diego State, and they saw that. Now, before we dive into year two, this is where, and I apologize in advance for this, Coach, this isn't the first conversation that Scott and I have had with the head coach of the Runnin' Rebels. So I think this is the point in the conversation where he would like to bring up that he has 4 years left of eligibility at the NCAA level.
This is true, yeah. If Coach is looking for any senior leadership on the team, I'm available for a scholarship. Nice, silky smooth 8-foot jump shot, Coach. It's good almost 50% of the time. So, but we're talking about, though, as we're on our way back, right? I mean, getting back to pack the MAC. And I think it's just such in the fabric of our community. I mean, I remember where I was watching the UNLV Oregon game, Sweet 16. And, it's not that long ago. And I think we're just all really looking forward to getting back to that.
Let's talk about that for a minute before we dive into next year. Because I remember a couple years ago being at a game, and there was a young man who worked in the department, great young man, and he found out I was born and raised here, and he asked me, he said, what was this place like when it was jumping? And I paused, and I said, you think I'm going to talk about 1990, don't you? I said, no, it was just 5 years ago. If you look at UNLV basketball from 2007 to 2013 under Coach Kruger, under Dave Rice, made 6 out of 7 tournaments. They were averaging 15,000 people a game, number 11 in the nation. So I sometimes think it's a trap for us as UNLV fans, and I think I can say this because I'm born and raised here, to talk about the 80s and 1990. But I have to imagine as a coach, it's really important to go back less than a decade ago and say, hey, this thing, we got to shoot for that. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And I think as any coach, when you come into a program, you study the history. You want to see, why, and understand why was this era this way? Why did things change? What coaches were successful? What did they do to be successful at a given time? And when you look at this program, we're all aware of the 30 years ago, the Tarkanian era, Final Fours, national championship, and that was a great time. But we do sometimes forget about the great era that Coach Kruger started. And I hold Coach Kruger in a really high regard. He's been a mentor of mine for a number of years, somebody I've looked up to, a man of tremendous character, and he stands for everything that's right in leadership in collegiate athletics. And you look at what he was able to instill here and how he was able to continue that building process. And we've studied that model. We've looked at, who did he hire? How did he recruit? How did he build relationships in the community? What were the ideals? Because the equation to be successful can be different. There's 357 now Division I universities, and success at each one may take a little bit different blend. And so we've studied that. We've looked at it. We've tried to emulate quite a few things. In fact, we've even tried to hire, we hired Coach Kruger's son to make sure that we would have the closest thing to Coach on our staff. But no, in all seriousness, you look at that era, it's not that long ago. And we're not that far removed from it. And it's not going to take us long to get back to that standard and doing things. But the only way to me to do that is to build a solid foundation, to uphold the standard every day, and then brick by brick, piece by piece, we put it together. everything in life that's worth having and success that's sustainable, you know, it takes time and you have to build it carefully. And if you have a hole in the foundation, that crack at some point is going to come back and can take your house down. So we want to be meticulous in the details, but we know where we can get to and we know we're not far away.
Well, and like Scott said, so many people remember that from not that many years ago. And just this past season, people felt it. Whether it was that Utah State, whether it was San Diego State, just that pride. You know, here in town, we call it Running Rebel Fever. And people felt it in year one. And we can only imagine what's coming year 2, 3, 4. But year 2 is going to be a little bit interesting. There's going to be a lot of changes. Tell us a little bit about what's coming up with this version of the Running Rebels.
Well, the most important thing now that we've set that standard is, for me, is to develop leadership within our players. As coaches, there's still times that your players hear like the Charlie Brown, the parent like wah, 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 the teacher wah, 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 and so they aren't always, you want to have as captive of an audience, but you've got to develop leadership within your program, especially in your older classes. When you bring freshmen in or new players into your program, you want them to have examples on your team that they can learn from. And that goes across the board. And how they treat people, how they prepare for practice, the effort that they give, the sense of pride they have in your program. And I think when you study successful programs, they have that leadership in players. And oftentimes, I hear coaches say, well, we don't have leadership. Well, I look at it as my job to develop those leaders. And we're fortunate last year to have young men like Marvin Coleman emerge. What a tremendous story here in our community. Goes from walk-on to essentially, he has the triple-double against New Mexico and is the guy leading our team late in the season.
Went to Henderson's Foothill High School. Gotta give you the Henderson credit, love.
You know, guys like Bryce Hamilton, who have been in this program, who emerge as a first-team all-conference player, second in the league in scoring, and Bake Jong. So we've got some guys that are older guys that have been in this program that they can provide that leadership. And I've told those guys that our success this year will be largely predicated on their ability to lead day in and day out through adversity, through challenges, through times where they struggle or don't have things go their way. Can they be those guys every day? And now we need to continue to develop that leadership. And guys like David Jenkins and Moses Wood sat out for us last year. Per the transfer rules, we think they can have a major impact as well. And so it's almost like our team is unique because we've got these older guys who have been here, but now they're going to be put in roles where they're more prominent as leaders. And just even a guy like Hamilton who scored at a high level, we need more from him. We need that, and we need, you know, more in other areas, and we'll develop those. So it's exciting to see how that unfolds. What I will stand behind is the character of those young men and their work ethic, and they're here for the right reasons. They're going to play with passion. They're going to be a group of guys that are together, and it's going to be a great example to see how they set up for the new players, whether it's the transfers or the freshmen coming into our program. So we're excited to get to work and put it all together.
You talk about the character, and I've had an opportunity for 20 years now to work with different student athletes, and there's some who just kind of stand out after you work with them. David Jenkins is one that just kind of, once you meet him, kind of stands out a little bit. You have a unique relationship with him, and of course, he should be a big part of next year's team. Would you talk a little bit about your relationship with him and what Runnin' Rebel fans can expect?
David's a tremendous young man. Highly competitive at everything. He's competitive. He wants to win a spelling bee, a video game, a walk across the street. He competes in everything, and he's high energy. He's got a dynamic personality. It's infectious. People are going to love seeing that enthusiasm and energy and passion he plays with. He and I go back, fortunate that he chose to come with us when I was the head coach at South Dakota State. I think he realized in the recruiting process, he set out for the biggest school at the highest level on the biggest stage. And then as he went through that process, said, you know, I just want to be somewhere with somebody who really wants me for me. And David and I have had that relationship, and we were fortunate 2 years together to win conference championships, go to NCAA tournament. And now that he decided to follow to UNLV is great because he had the option to go anywhere he wanted in America, and he wanted to be here. He wanted to be a running Rebel. He and his dad are both very aware, being from Tacoma, what this program's meant to college basketball, the recent successes as well. And so we've got a very competitive, I think in some ways, David and I don't look the same, but in a lot of ways we share a lot of similar qualities and have that connection and synergy. So he'll be able to carry that message and have somebody in our locker room that can always go to our guys and say, look, I've been through this with him before. This is why he's challenging you. This is why he's demanding this. And if you listen and if you trust and if you accept, this is how this will go. I've lived it, and that's so valuable for a program.
What would surprise the fan base, Coach, when the team takes the floor this year? What's going to surprise the fan base, maybe?
Surprise would be, in my opinion, it's going to be that immediate buy-in. It's that these guys all signed up to be running Rebels under the coaching staff with the standard and everything that we do, and so that they're going to be starting out at a place that says, we want to be here, we want to be together, we want to be connected. I think we saw that last year. It was still a lot of questions being asked, and so we'll be able to hit the ground running from day one. You know, at the same time, we do have a lot of young guys on our roster. We're bringing in, we have 5 players that were part of our program last year. So we have some experience in that group, but we have 8 of our 13 are new faces, and 6 of them are freshmen who have never logged a college minute. So I think you're going to see that buy-in. I think you're going to see that excitement, enthusiasm from day one. There's probably also going to be some times that there's some learning curve and some growing pains from freshmen learning like we all did as freshmen. But I think it's going to be exciting for all of us to see how that develops, and I can promise you it'll be a group that'll be fun to watch.
It's time to call a quick timeout here on The Comeback and learn a little bit more about our sports leader and our business leader. We just have 5 quick questions for each of you. Going to ask you the same question, and we're looking for short, brief answers so our viewers can just find out a little bit more about you personally. First question. 3 of your favorite movies.
Remember the Titans, Good Will Hunting, Blindside.
I like a good fantasy, Lord of the Rings, any of them. Just watched Hoosiers the other night. It's a classic.
So we have Lord of the Rings and Hoosiers.
And then I'll watch the Lord of the Rings again.
There you go. All right, we'll take that. If you weren't a college basketball coach, what would you be?
High school teacher.
If you weren't a CEO of a chamber, what would you be?
We covered that. I'm shooting guard for coach.
There we go. All right. 3 words your wife, Allison, might choose to describe you.
Way too competitive.
Nice. All right, same question, but not his wife, Allison, your wife, Michelle. Right. 3 words.
Let's go with thoughtful, manager, and awake.
Awake. Yeah. All right. Favorite TV show?
College Game Day, ESPN. I love the start of, Saturday in sports, watching College Game Day.
How much do we miss that right now? I mean, I know it's just going back to what Scott said about just missing sports. Favorite TV show?
The Office.
All right. There's nothing wrong with the Dunder Mifflin crew at all. All right, last one. Best piece of leadership advice you've ever received?
Don't take criticism from anybody you wouldn't seek advice from.
Lead in the present.
All right. That's our timeout. We love it. Let's get back to more of The Comeback. Scott, as you've put this series together, you've named it The Comeback. Why is this series so important to so many business leaders around the state of Nevada?
Well, I think we've talked again about the rallying, the unification of sports, but the community is, it's been tough. I mean, it's been tough in so many ways, and we've all had to deal with this pandemic period. It's very personal. How do you return? How do you open your business? How do you practice again? How do you shake someone's hand? I mean, how do you do all these things? And it's just changing business models, to what this new era is going to be. But we need to focus on that. We need to get back to business. We need to get back to sports. And I think doing this series with Coach and our other sports leaders will allow everyone to really rally around a message that we really miss right now. And that, being able to watch, talk to our sports leaders and be around them again and talk about what's coming, it's the comeback. And that's for business, for community, and for the state.
We're being challenged. I mean, we're underdogs right now. It's the way it is. And we have to embrace that mindset and put that team together and fight. Fight every day, just like a team in sports would. So let's talk about teams in sports. As you go out there and you recruit your team, you're following these young men. What traits are you looking for people that you want to surround yourself with in this program?
Unrelenting passion for the game of basketball is at the top. For me, if you love this game and you're going to pour your heart and soul into it, we're going to be able to find a way to connect, a way to help elevate you to a higher level. But if you have that passion and you love it, you're going to do everything that it takes necessary for your team to be successful as well as individually to be successful. So that's at the start. As young people experience adversity, that's something that we watch and we study. How do they handle that? Because invariably in college, you're going to have adversity. You may have been the leading scorer and now you come off the bench. You may have been somebody that played a prominent role, and now you may not get in a game. And so we like to study when they're on their travel teams and their high school teams, body language. How do they handle situations? How do they celebrate their teammates? How do they accept coaching? And so we're studying all these things. There's certainly a talent basketball-wise that you're looking for in scoring the ball and height and all those things. But to me, it's far more about the intangible qualities that make people successful, make teams successful. And so we really try to study that. And then the last part of that is the support network of those young people, because we need to feel like when we go through some challenges that we can have that support network in unison to provide the support that young man needs. And so we study that and we say, hey, who's in this person's circle? We talk a lot about, people being the sum of those that they surround themselves by on a daily basis. So those are the factors and those are the things we're watching when we're at a travel game, a high school game. When we're on the phone, we're always kind of trying to put that story together so we know what's going to happen or what we believe will happen when they get to UNLV.
One of the reasons why I love working with you is that what you just described about the young men in basketball. Those are the same traits in business, in life that leaders want. And particularly right now, we're facing adversity. And we're finding right now about ourselves as leaders. We're finding out from the teams that we work with, what are we made of? And it's a mindset that we have. And there's got to be certain teams that you've been with before that you knew this team was able, hey, if we got down, early in the game, we'd be able to come back. Or maybe a team that if we had a bad loss, we might be able to bounce back, whereas other teams couldn't do that. What's that mindset that's needed to be able to make a comeback?
You've got to have grit. And I think grit is built by investing in each other and by working hard every single day, putting one foot in front of the other, coming back every day and giving your best effort, and then hit and repeat. And doing it in such a way where you're not expecting instantaneous results, because it happens over time. And when I think about it, and you're talking about some of those comebacks, I'm thinking about specific games I've been a part of and teams I've been a part of and what was going on in the huddle and what they were talking about in the locker room the day before. And you know that when the team has the ability to make those comebacks, that they know they've invested through hard work together. They've been through it together. They've stuck together. They've come together. And even though the scoreboard obviously says, hey, we're down 7, we're down 10, there's 3 minutes to go, that group really believes internally that they get strength from each other and they celebrate each other. So a lot of times it just takes one play. And I love basketball so much because that momentum can shift in that moment. And so really think it comes down to that hard work and investment together over a duration of time that allows teams to come back and do things that to them are common and to the outside world are amazing.
Any comeback stand out to you in your career?
Well, I'll take, even from our team this year, and it wasn't a victory, but we were on the road at Cincinnati. And we were at a time as a team that we were still trying to find ourselves. And we had lost some overtime games before. And we had come back, we were down 10 with just under a minute to go. And it was really, to me, it wasn't necessarily a turning point in our season, but it was something where our guys felt like you could sense as we move forward that no lead was insurmountable. And whether we were the team in front, I think it taught our guys anything can happen. But we saw that in that moment we could be on the road in a hostile environment against a team that's been an NCAA tournament team for a number of years, when we're still trying to find ourselves, and we could still put it together in that moment and find a way. And so that stuck with me because it was a teachable moment for the rest of the year. You know, we had some games, particularly with Fresno State, both on the road and at home, that were somewhat of come from behind type of victories. But I really think that game at Cincinnati set the tone and the table for don't take anything for granted, because anything can happen in this game at any time.
Take us behind the scene right now of those of us in business, and we love sports, but you know, you're down at San Diego State, Viejas, packed crowd, going nuts, played with the lead most of the game, but at the end of the game, it's shrinking a little bit. You're in the huddle, everyone's rooting against you. Take us inside that huddle. What environment do you want as a leader to be created at that moment?
Well, the number one thing the guys have to gain from me is confidence. They have to have confidence in that moment, and you have to be poised. I think so many times when I first became a head coach, you'd tell your team, hey, you know, be composed. Don't argue with officials' calls. Stay together. And then I'd watch myself on the sideline yelling and jumping around, and I'd say, I'm making myself nervous just by watching me. And so I think as they're coming into those huddles, or they see you standing on the sideline, they're going to gain strength from what they see from you as a leader, you know, in terms of how you carry yourself in that moment, but also from their teammates. They want to see their teammates are behind them. And so I know that as that game went on, I felt like a football coach who you're playing like a prevent defense, because you know the team's throwing the ball and you want to keep it in front of you in a football game. And so it's that delicate balance of managing time and score with maintaining that aggressive spirit and that enthusiasm. And it was a challenge, but it was the right moment at the right time for our group. And I could tell when they came into those huddles how they were accepting and receiving information. They were locked in. Every word, they were right in there. There wasn't a time we had to say, guys, attention, because they knew the magnitude of every moment and that every play had a chance of changing the outcome of that game. And so it was an exciting time, and it was a fun time. It was surreal. And I remember even as I walked into the locker room, there was a part of me that was like, did that really just happen? And then just taking that moment, so many friends have told me, like, you just got to really live in that moment. And for me, it was about 10 seconds walking from, you know, the court to the locker room, and you're thinking about how cool that really was that a group of people came together that way.
And just taking that moment to be present. I know it's so tough for so many people in your profession and those who get a chance to play. What did you learn about running Rebel basketball that day, the next couple days, both locally, nationally, because obviously it became national news, but what did you really kind of see a glimpse about this program?
That when we have success, that UNLV is a national brand, right? And so now people are talking about it on SportsCenter. They're on, you know, talk radio shows. That we garnered that attention quickly, and it was really due to one single game. And you know, look, San Diego State had a tremendous year, and to start 26-0, amazing. And even, you know, they were the best team in our league from start to finish. But for our guys to see that, look, when you do the right thing and we're together, everybody's noticing. And so I felt like the texts I got from community leaders and people that were fans and supporters, they were so encouraged by that game being a sign of things to come and what UNLV could do, not only for this community, but on that national landscape. And all of a sudden, I'm being asked to be on national radio shows and television shows and things along those lines. And they want to talk again about the history of Running Rebel basketball and how that may be a glimpse of the future. So it was a pretty surreal time, and I was really appreciative to everybody that took notice of it and sent well wishes and excitement about the future.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why, even with this series, it was kind of a strategy to start with Running Rebel basketball, because that's really the start of it. It's amazing what the Golden Knights have done. The Raiders coming in, it's amazing what's going on in this community. But like we said earlier, in the fabric of this community, in the DNA, it's Running Rebel basketball. And we saw some of those glimpses last year, and we're excited for what you're doing and where we're going in the future. Now, we talked about what leads to a comeback or being able to hold off. What about when teams aren't able to do it? What gets in their way of not being able to pull off that comeback or not being able to bounce back after a tough loss?
We've talked so much about unity and gaining strength from each other. And what I've seen is outside distractions, individual agendas, preconceived notions of how many points someone should score or how things should go gets in the way of team unity and success. And what you learn, throughout your career in sports is the teams that perform the best are the most together. They're the most unified. And so that's why it's so important to us that we want to identify that passion. We want to identify that support network, and we want to build that sense of unity, because if everybody's not, rowing the boat in that same direction, it just takes one person going against you that creates that opposition. And so we try to build that. We try to recruit it. But we know that for us to be able to make those type of comebacks or to reach the level we need everybody together. And that's part of the beauty of sports, is that it's not about being the most talented. It's not even about being the biggest in size or stature and all those things. It's about who's the most together, who's the most unified. Can you be in that moment together? And when you can, miracles can happen.
Right. And that's the beauty of business and life, too. It's not always about being the most talented in business, having the most resources. It's about, are we together? Are we working hard? Facing adversity a lot of times, and a lot of our leaders right now in business, we have people on our teams right now who are worried about job security. I mean, there's so much uncertainty in our world. And as a leader, you're trying to create an environment that gives the people that you're leading confidence, right? How do you do that with the young men? How do you help to give them confidence when they might be struggling?
I want to start with making sure they know how much we care about them as individuals. You do that through actions, not through words. And so to me, it starts by being a great listener in the recruiting process. So I know their story. I know what makes them tick. As we're trying to identify if they're the right young man for our program, that's part of our evaluation tool. But as you build that connection and that relationship, you want to continue to make sure that they know through that at all times that you love them, that you're going to challenge them to be their best, and you want to help them to make their dreams come true. And I think when young people know that, and they know your sincerity, and then you invest that time each and every day, because we're going to challenge them. We're going to push them out of their comfort zone. We are going to challenge them to do things that they didn't even think or know that they could do. And we have a very high standard of what we demand each day. And so sometimes that can be uncomfortable, and that's okay. So to me, it's more than anything that they know that you're in it with them, that you love them. It's like, in business as well. I mean, we try the best we can. If we're going to critique something or encourage a behavior, a lot of times it's one-on-one. A lot of times it's in a voice just like this. Many times it's in an office with the door closed, so they don't feel under attack. They don't feel that you're alienating them. And then when you praise them, you're doing it publicly. You're doing it in front of their teammates so you can build them up together. And, we talked about our team, and that's going to be something that we really preach this season, is going to be celebrate the successes of each other. Lift your brothers next to you, lift them up. And so we think that really is what inspires and brings the best out of people, and we want to do that with each young man on a daily basis.
One more question when it comes to kind of that comeback. And so many of us in business right now are underdogs. We're behind. And when you're an underdog, you have very little margin of error. So when you have very little margin of error, and this is actually a phrase you've taught me over the past few months, be intentional with your actions. it's critical right now for so many of us to be intentional because we don't have a margin for error. Will you explain that, being intentional with our actions?
Well, to me, it's looking at each day and saying there's a finite amount of time that you have. And if you were to, at the end of every day, before you go to bed, if you were to look at how you spent that time in the day, would you say that reflects your value system? If you say you're about family, did you spend it with your family? If you say you're about the young men in your program, did you spend it with the young men in your program? If you say you're about leadership and building a team, did you spend those hours that way? And to me, it's almost like having a daily blueprint that says, here's how I'm spending my time to reflect my value system. And so I think more than ever, being intentional now even comes down to putting some time into being empathetic, being compassionate, asking others, what have you been through? What can I do to help support you? Just know that I'm here for you, and doing those type of things. But then as you have a plan, whether you're returning to practice, you're returning to business, understanding the precision that you have to have in that time each and every day, because a lot of times there's distractions. For me, a lot of times social media or things that are in the media, things can be more of a distraction than a positive. And so we really try to stay in that zone each and every day with people and connecting with them and building their confidence and bringing them together, and then making sure that that's an everyday commitment. There's challenges out there. There's things that can take you away from it, but being intentional with your time is so important.
Scott, we've heard from Coach about how the comebacks work in sports. What's it going to take for our Nevada businesses to complete our comeback?
Well, I think we're seeing it now. We saw gaming recently open, which is such a big part of our community. But I want to encourage our business community to continue to stay local, shop local. I mean, it sounds like such a basic thing, but think about that restaurant you like to enjoy with your family before this pandemic hit. Please go back to it. I mean, keep it local, and the retail habits, they're all changing. This has sped some things along, but such a core of our community is the mom and pop businesses. And take a look around, at your neighborhood centers, and go back and visit them. Shop local and be local. I think is what, that's a Chamber of Commerce perspective for sure, but I think it's very true. So,
Scott, CEO, President, Henderson Chamber of Commerce. I don't think we got the commitment out of Coach for the scholarship offer, but next time we talk, I know it's going to come up. TJ, love the opportunity of you being here, and we love having you in Southern Nevada and what you're doing with the Running Rebels. So thank you for spending time with us today.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us for the first episode of The Comeback. We'll be back in 2 weeks when we visit with Mark Bedane, the president of the Las Vegas Raiders, and the president and CEO of the Vegas Chamber, Mary Beth Seawald. Until then, remember, business is a team sport, and we're rooting for you. Be great.